Hey everybody, Owen here from the Lardcore team and welcome back for episode 4 of our Devlog series. As you'd expect, we've been maintaining radio silence over the last 2 months or so to ensure that the enemy doesn't discover our plans. As today we're going to be diving into some of the quality of life changes that our team have been making to help improve the overall experience that is Hogs of War. Now, as you would expect, we begin with a couple of visual updates that we'd like to share with you. Myself and the team are well aware of how different Lardcore once looked to the original, in that our saturation levels were quite high and that gritty feeling was missing. Well, we've been dialing things back a bit and refining our lighting and terrain textures to capture the right feel from level to level, particularly within the single player campaign. As the player progresses from normal to hard mode, the map setting in the time of day, the weather and overall feel will change. In the game's story, your army of hogs are returning to the same battlefield, so it makes sense that the map would reflect that. Most notably via the increase in explosive craters and decals littered across the terrain and the reduction in grass and other types of foliage. Don't forget that Lardcore intends to bring an additional difficulty mode on top of the existing 2 in single player, so expect the landscape to change there as well. Speaking of decals, those of you with keen eyes who watch the biggest Lardcore challenges video over on my channel will have seen that we added unique tank track markings to the terrain whenever you drive anywhere. Note that this is for all movable vehicles, by the way, so that includes the tank, aquatank, duck and truck. If you haven't seen said video, then you'll be able to find it linked at the end of this one. Alongside footprints, vehicles, and the other plethora of explosion environmental decals, you can see just how big of a visual impact you will be able to leave on the terrain, as ultimately the battlefield around you can slowly be turned into a mud bath. Elsewhere, our lead artist and programmers have been very busy updating our snow and rain effects. These are indeed still a work in progress, but it's certainly an improvement on what we had before. Not to mention the additional ways we intend to bring the game world to life more, including some more secret methods, but we'll be talking about these in a future devlog video, because it's time instead to talk about particle effects. At current count, Lardcore has 80 individual particle effects. The same can technically be said for the original game, however, as players will know, certain effects were just simply duplicated, mainly for weapon explosions. As we now live in an age that isn't hampered by PS1 memory, Lardcore holds the luxury of being able to create unique particles for each and every applicable weapon. From the guided missile to the cluster grenade, from shockwave to cattle prod, we aim to build our own set of effects while also making sure that we don't miss out on what made the original effects memorable. In much the same way as the work that I've done so far on the map visuals in toning things down to the right level, the same can also be said for the learning curve of creating particle effects from scratch. It's in understanding that a good particle is one where you can't see the individual layers because they blend together so well, and that's going to be at the forefront of my working over the next coming months. The Hogs of War community are no stranger to making their grievances known with the original game, and we've been listening to what you guys have to say. It goes without saying that Mission 20's Achilles heel is synonymous for the gigantic amount of time that the player has to wait before they receive the 2 medal drops. On the face of it, you think it wasn't so bad given that there is only 10 turns separating the second medal drop from the first, but the problem is that you have to wait 45 frickin' turns before you even receive that first medal. Because of this, players spend the majority of the mission simply waiting about and holding the enemy surgeons at bay, usually keeping a single enemy pig alive before they can grab the goodies and finally get out of there. In light of this, we've made the obvious but necessary decision to reduce the amount of turn time required before the medals drop, working in tandem with the existing enemy reinforcements that drop in on turn 30 to hopefully produce a more engaging mission. We'll be continuing to comb through the existing campaign to make further minute changes that will help to strengthen the weaker parts of gameplay. I'm looking at you, Mission 21 spawns. Elsewhere, our engineers have been tinkering with the available vehicle camera. This alteration is more down to the placement of additional props, given how in the original game the camera could technically clip under the terrain when inside a vehicle. So with that in mind, you can understand why we technically wouldn't want you to see under there. It's a small but dynamic change that we hope can make aiming with the likes of the tank and aquatank a little bit more straightforward. And lastly, I'd like to give a quick mention to the available map spaces, specifically those that were left open to interpretation in the original game. Take Mission 19's chemical compound for instance. On the enemy side of the map there is a ton of empty space that much earlier in Hogs of War's development did actually contain buildings that were eventually removed. So in Lardcore I've been busy filling these spaces back up again. We want to be utilizing these spaces as much as possible, as the primary goal here is to provide a different method of play in these areas through the creation of new building designs, whilst also keeping in mind the story details of each mission. Mission 19 is where the enemy are holding deadly chemical weapons that the player must destroy, so applying more context to how the enemy are working and living within these kinds of spaces are going to be important to us in Lardcore. You'll find further new structures scattered across Australasia, especially within our new difficulty mode.
Oh my!
Speaking as someone who started his career in QA, I must commend every member of the existing Hogs community that has lent a hand in relaying vital information relating to bugs and other findings to our dev team. There's no doubt that Hogs has its fair share of strange bugs, from enemies holding incorrect weapons to being able to interrupt the game flow for some funky free-roaming abilities. The possibility to break the original game seems almost endless. Luckily, our team have been making strong headway in fixing the most notorious of the bunch, the infamous promotion point bug on Mission 17. As of right now, you can no longer be penalised by Major Grimly for destroying the lower tent last in Lardcore, so our next step is to then get that second medal dropped in as well. Alongside this, we also have fixes to another fan favourite, the falling through object bug. Typically, this predominantly occurs to AI pigs in that whenever they jump out of a vehicle or building, there is sometimes the possibility that they can softlock the game by becoming stuck after falling through the surface of the asset. Luckily, I was able to find 100% reproducible steps for this bug, which subsequently has now been resolved. Obviously, our focus first and foremost is going to be on the most severe game breakers, while also making sure to leave the most iconic silly bugs as they are. As it is already December, I'm afraid to say that this will be our last video for the year of 2024, so from our team to you, we wish you all a very Merry Hogmas and New Year. 2025 promises to be another crucial year for the development of Hogs of War Lardcore. As we've stated before in the past, it is indeed going to be the time period that we are hoping to finish and release the game on the PlayStation Store. However, should the timeline change for any reason, the community will of course be the first to know. As always, feel free to check out all of our social media links, including our new account over on Blue Sky for those who have migrated from X. You'll find everything listed in the description below. In the meantime, that is going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you all in 2025 for more insight into the remaster's development. Bye for now.